I'm 32, male, and I work a pretty standard office job. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills, keeps the lights on, and gives me some breathing room for a decent life. I live in a two-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Not the fanciest place, but it's home. I've been dating my girlfriend, 29, for about 2 years. Let's call her G. Things were steady between us. Not perfect, but solid enough that I thought we were building towards something long-term. Or so I believed. It all started about 6 weeks ago. G came to me with what seemed like a strange but manageable request. She told me her ex, R, was going through a tough time, lost his job, couldn't make rent, and was on the verge of being homeless. She asked if he could stay with us temporarily. I wasn't thrilled about it, as you can imagine. Who wants their girlfriend's ex under the same roof? But G swore up and down that it was purely platonic. We broke up years ago, she said. He's just a friend now, and I'd never turn my back on a friend in need. I hesitated but eventually agreed, with one condition: 2 weeks, tops. I would have to figure something out after that. I told myself I was being mature, reasonable, maybe even generous. But looking back, that was my first mistake. I moved in a few days later, carrying only a duffel bag and some suspiciously expensive sneakers for someone supposedly down on their luck. He was polite at first, almost overly so, always offering to do the dishes, thanking me for letting him crash, keeping mostly to himself. For a moment, I thought maybe this wouldn't be so bad, but then little things started piling up. First, he began monopolizing the living room, sprawled out on the couch all day with the TV blaring. He claimed he was job hunting on his laptop, but I rarely saw him send an email or even open a browser tab. Then came the food. My fridge was suddenly emptying at twice the usual speed, and every time I opened a cabinet, something else was missing. I confronted G about it, and she brushed it off. He's just trying to get back on his feet, she said. We could be patient, can't we? 2 weeks came and went. I brought it up to G, reminding her that this arrangement was supposed to be temporary. She sighed, gave me a pitying look and said, I know, but he's still struggling. Can't we give him a little more time? Something about her tone set me on edge, but I let it slide. Another mistake. By week 4, things had gone from bad to worse. I was treating my house like a frat house. He invited people over without asking, left beer bottles on every flat surface, and had the audacity to blast music late into the night. I confronted him one evening when I got home from work and found the living room littered with empty pizza boxes and cigarette butts. Dude, I said, trying to stay calm, this isn't working. You need to figure out another place to stay. He didn't even look up from his phone. I'm trying, man. It's not exactly easy out there. I turned to G, expecting her to back me up, but she just stood there, arms crossed, looking annoyed. He's trying, she snapped. Why are you always so hard on him? Hard on him? I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something wasn't adding up. G was way more protective of R than seemed reasonable. I decided to keep a closer eye on things. The next day, I came home early from work, partly to see if I was doing anything remotely productive, but mostly because I had a sinking feeling in my gut that wouldn't go away. Sure enough, I walked in to find R and G sitting way too close on the couch. They jumped apart the second they saw me, but the tension in the air was impossible to miss. I didn't say anything then. I needed proof, not suspicions. Over the next week, I started paying closer attention, checking phone logs, watching their interactions, even casually asking mutual friends if they'd noticed anything odd. The pieces started falling into place. Finally, I decided to check the security cameras I'd installed last year after a string of neighborhood break-ins. That's when I found it, the smoking gun. Footage of her sneaking into G's room late at night and not coming out until the early hours of the morning. My heart dropped into my stomach. They weren't just disrespecting me. They were mocking me, treating my home like their personal love nest. I spent the rest of the night seething, trying to decide how to handle it. By morning, I knew what I had to do. First, I called a locksmith. By the time R&G woke up, the locks on every exterior door had been changed. I stood in the living room, arms crossed, waiting for them to come downstairs. What's going on? G asked, rubbing her eyes. What's going on? I repeated, my voice cold. What's going on is you two have been sneaking around behind my back. You thought I wouldn't notice? Her face went pale, but her had the nerve to look offended. What are you talking about, man? Don't play dumb, I snapped. I've got footage of you sneaking into her room at night. You think I'd let that slide? G stammered something about, it's not what it looks like, but I cut her off. I don't care what your excuses are. Both of you out. Now. They tried to argue, of course. G started crying, saying I was overreacting and throwing everything away over a misunderstanding. Or tried to intimidate me, puffing up his chest and claiming I had no right to kick him out without notice. That's when I dropped the hammer. I showed her the rental agreement. My name was the only one on it. Then I pulled out my phone and started dialing the police. If you're not out of here in 10 minutes, I'll let the cops handle it. It was like flipping a switch. Suddenly, I was scrambling to pack his things, and G was begging me to reconsider. Where am I supposed to go? She wailed. Not my problem, I said, standing firm. You made your choices. Now live with them. By the time they were gone, I felt a strange mix of anger, relief, and satisfaction. But I wasn't done yet. I wasn't about to let them get off that easy. A few days later, I filed a small claims case against R for the damages he'd caused to my property. Stains on the carpet, broken furniture, the works. I also reported his freeloading to the unemployment office, just in case he was pulling any scams there. As for G, I made sure our mutual friends knew exactly what had happened. I wasn't petty about it, just honest. If she wanted to explain her side, she was free to, but judging by how quickly people started cutting her off, I doubt she had much of a case. It's been a few weeks now, and I've finally got my house back to myself. It's quieter, cleaner, and a hell of a lot more peaceful. The experience sucked, no doubt about it, but it taught me an important lesson. Never ignore red flags, no matter how much you want to believe the best in someone. The fallout from kicking G and her out wasn't immediate, but it came. A few days after they left, I started getting texts from G. At first, they were half apologies, mixed with deflections. I didn't mean for it to happen like that, one said. I was just helping out a friend, and things got complicated, said another. When I ignored her, the tone shifted. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. She accused me of overreacting, of being cruel, and even of ruining her life. One message stood out. You think you're so righteous, but you'll regret this. Watch. I wasn't sure what she meant, but I didn't have to wait long to find out. A week later, I came home to find a strange car parked in my driveway. It was G and R. They had brought reinforcements, two of R's friends, guys who looked like they were ready to throw their weight around. Let us in, G demanded, her voice sharp. I left some of my stuff, and you can't legally keep me from getting it. She wasn't wrong. By law, I had to give her access to retrieve her belongings. But I wasn't about to let her and her crew waltz in unsupervised. You're not stepping inside without me, I said, keeping my voice steady. R stepped forward, trying to loom over me. What's your problem, man? Just let her grab her stuff, or we'll make this harder than it needs to be. I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Go ahead. Make it harder. I got this all on camera. The shift was immediate. R backed off, muttering something under his breath, and G crossed her arms, glaring at me. Fine, she snapped. We'll do it your way. I let her in, but only allowed her to take what was unquestionably hers. No joint items, no things she might have accidentally decided were hers. I stood in the doorway the entire time, watching like a hawk. She tried to grab a few things that weren't hers, a set of expensive kitchen knives, for example, but I shut her down every time. This isn't yours, I said firmly, taking the knives out of her hands. Oh, come on, she whined. You never even used these. Doesn't matter. Put them down. After an hour of this back and forth, she stormed out, empty-handed except for a single duffel bag. I thought that would be the end of it, but of course it wasn't. 2 days later, I got a call from my landlord. G had filed a complaint, claiming I had illegally evicted her and R. Apparently, she was trying to argue that she had tenant rights because she'd been living in the house for so long. I was ready for this. I sent my landlord a copy of the text messages where G admitted she and R were staying temporarily. I also provided proof that G wasn't on the lease and hadn't contributed a single cent to rent or utilities. My landlord backed me up completely. "You're in the clear," he said. "If they try to push it, they don't have a leg to stand on." Sure enough, the complaint went nowhere. But the audacity of it all was staggering. Even after everything, G and I were still trying to manipulate the situation in their favor. At this point, I was done playing defense. I decided to go on the offensive. First, I filed a restraining order against both of them, citing harassment and their repeated attempts to intimidate me. My lawyer assured me I had more than enough evidence to make it stick. Next, I made sure they felt the financial pinch. Remember the small claims case I mentioned earlier? I followed through with it. When the court date came, neither G nor us showed up, which meant I won by default. I was awarded damages for the property they'd trashed, plus court fees. Collecting the money wasn't easy, but I was persistent. I got a lien placed on R's car, which I knew he was using to couch surf at various friends' places. When he finally sold it, I got my cut. The final blow came when I sent a polite but firm email to R's previous landlord, the one who'd kicked him out before he landed at my place. I mentioned in detail the damage he'd caused to my home and suggested they might want to check their records for any unpaid bills or damages. Turns out, R had skipped out on rent and left his old apartment in shambles. The landlord was more than happy to pursue legal action against him. By the end of it, G and I were both scrambling. Mutual friends told me they were couch surfing, bouncing from one place to another and burning bridges everywhere they went. Reflecting on it all, I realize now that I was too trusting, too willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. But that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt because someone broke your trust. It hurts because it makes you question your own judgment. In the end, though, I've come out of this stronger. My home is mine again, my peace is restored, and I've learned a valuable lesson about setting boundaries and standing up for myself. If you enjoyed this wild ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Who knows? The next story might be even crazier than this one. Stay tuned.